I grew up in a little town in Pennsylvania called Clearfield, and it was in a little valley in the Alleghenies, and there were lots of woods around and farms, and that's how I guess I came to have such affinity for animals and nature. It's always been a big part of my life. But I've always drawn, and I've drawn on paper bags and sidewalks and napkins and in the inside of my mother's books, which I'm sure she I'm sure if she was still alive she would forgive me now, but then she was pretty upset about it. But just always, I never wanted to be anything but an artist. I never could be anything but an artist. I wanted to be a pirate for a while, but wasn't much calling for that, so I went back to my art. And just all the way through grade school, junior high, high school, I was encouraged by my art teachers and by my parents. Encouraged by my parents until it came time to go to art school. And then they didn't like that idea very much. They didn't like the idea of my going to New York. They wanted me to go get a liberal arts education, major in art, because they didn't really think that you could make a living at it. They certainly didn't think a woman could make a living at it. This was back in the 50s. But I insisted and said if I didn't go to art school, I wasn't going to go to school. So I went to Pratt Institute. That was, I think, the bravest thing or the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life, because I had no idea what I was getting into. I really was a very young 18-year-old. But I just jumped in with both feet and struggled for years and years, doing one thing or another, and never, not really finding out where I belonged until I started doing children's books. But I always tell kids now, I teach at Pratt one day a week, I tell my students, you don't, and when I do school programs, you don't go from your dreams in a straight line to realizing them. You go all over the place and take a very circuitous route. And maybe you'll wind up someplace that you didn't even expect to. Certainly I didn't really think children's books or picture books when I was, searching out my career. And I think one of the main reasons was that there weren't that many picture books then. Picture books didn't really come on the scene in a big way until the late 70s and the early 80s, which I guess had to do with demographics and certainly technology. They got better at being able to do picture books in color. And so I kind of rode that crest. And here I am. I didn't know Doreen when the book was published. I still had not met her. Daniel Pinkwater and Scott Simon read that book on their Saturday morning show, and it was sold out before it was even published. They read it, I think it was 2 weeks before pub date, and it went into third printing or something before it even hit the stands. So it was an instant success and a big surprise, I think, to everybody. There is this humor that can be appreciated on an adult level. It's an interesting combination. It's not something that you plan, it's just the way it happens. Like somebody asked me once, well, do you actually illustrate to, for adults so that adults will like your illustrations too? And I said, no, I don't. I illustrate for myself. And what pleases me is what goes into the book. And if it appeals to adults too, that's great. But I know it appeals to kids. And I know that because of the kid in me. Because I don't think I ever really grew up anyway. I still peer at things, I think, the same way children do. Give things a lot more attention than adults do. And I think that goes into my illustrations, goes into my thinking, my stories. I'm not as prolific a writer as I am an illustrator, but when I write my own stories, it happens the same way. Pictures come into my head, and the pictures dictate the words rather than the other way around. And when I'm illustrating a story by another author, of course, the author's words put the pictures in my head. So it's all the same process. It just gets jumbled around a little bit, whether or not you do pictures first or the words first. When I write, it's actually a combination of the two. I usually do some drawings first to get my writing, my word thoughts going, and then I put the words to it. Most of the stories that I write come out of experiences that I've had with my husband Ted. We travel all over the world and usually go to places where there's wildlife because that's our main interest. And so What's the Matter Habibi is a story about a camel and a camel driver that came from my experiences with camels and camel drivers in Morocco and Egypt. And a book called Chubbo's Pool is about a selfish hippopotamus that won't share his pool with anybody else. And that was a real hippopotamus that lived in the river outside a camp we stayed at in Africa, who would not share his pool with any of the other animals, and he wouldn't share it with us either. And so that's where my stories usually come from. Cat Count and Animal Snackers came out of the blue. Like Doreen says, Click Clack Moo, just 3 words just popped into her head. So it is, I am really inarticulate when it comes to talking about where this ability comes from or where these ideas come from. I truly believe it is simply the way you're wired. You don't have any, it's not up to you. You just do it because it's what you do. I think most artists and writers would agree with me on that. My husband Ted went to Pratt too. He had already graduated when I met him, and it's funny because my roommate and his roommate were best friends, and my roommate kept telling me, "You've got to meet my boyfriend's roommate. You've just got to meet him. You guys are soulmates. You'll love each other. Got the same sense of humor. You both love animals." And we just never somehow got together until I guess the end of my sophomore year. I met him, and he showed me a picture of his pet lion cub, and that did it, And we realized that we were both interested in travel. We wanted to go to Africa to see the great herds before they dwindled, and we laughed together. We just had so much in common. And I admired him so because he draws in a very naturalistic, realistic way, which I don't. And I envied that, I really did. But he also is a Caldecott Honor winner, by the way, for a book called Peppy the Lamplighter. So then finally we got married, and we bought a brownstone house in Brooklyn. And Ted works on the top floor. His studio is on the top floor. Mine is on the second floor. And we work pretty much in silence from 7 o'clock in the morning till about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, except for going up and downstairs, checking each other's work out. It goes something like, "Come up here and see what I'm doing." And I said, "No, I was up there last time. You come down here and see what I'm doing." That kind of thing. We break for lunch, but it's pretty much, an illustrator's life is really pretty much a hermit's life. You sit in your own studio and you work in silence for however long, however many hours you can stand it. I can't even listen to music when I'm working, and it has to be just completely quiet. We were bit by the travel bug, and we've been going someplace ever since. And we've been to Africa, different parts of Africa 9 times. We've been to India 4 times. I want to go back there. I'd love to go to Pushkar to see the camel races. There are wonderful wildlife refuges there that we just would love to go back and visit. And Mongolia has, the thing that's drawing us there is this annual festival called the Nadam, and they have, they celebrate their 3 most ancient sports: wrestling, archery, and horseback riding, horse racing. And the races are, they're raced by 5-year-olds up to 13-year-olds. So we're sure there's a picture book there. And that's what we're hoping to do, another collaboration like Gorilla Walk.
The Reading Rockets Meet the Author series is a production of WETA. Major funding for Reading Rockets comes from the United States Department of Education, Office of Special Education Programs. For more author interviews, recommended reading lists, and information about teaching kids to read, please visit us online at www.readingrockets.org.